to the team and rest of the people to get join, and let's start after a minute. Um, SF 3 from MST Solutions, they're handling Salesforce currently, and Forex certified developer. This is a short introduction about myself, and let's dive into the topic. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible to the rest of the team. Okay, so today we'll be seeing about the powerful Salesforce automation process, that is Flow Builder. Okay, so basically, a flow builder is nothing but an automation process, and it has some more power and utilization features when compared to rest of the automation process. As every one of us know, we see that whenever we are trying to develop some workflows or process builders, we'll currently be seeing something, a kind of a notification that shows like, hey, hi, move your things to Flow, and Salesforce will be withdrawing these two technologies in future, maybe a couple of updates or so, and this is sales Flow will be mainly used. And one more thing that we'll be noticing is like, for every Salesforce update, I mean, for every release, we'll be getting some features or some expanding things and new things to update only in Flow. And the same doesn't happen with a workflow or a process builder. So eventually, as we go up, as we higher up, both of these things are going to vanish from Salesforce, and only when we consider an automation process, Flow and approval process will be existing. Of course, approval process has a totally a different set of things to do, but I'm just telling. Okay, so let's diving into this agenda. We'll be seeing about Salesforce Flow, the categorizations, the basic categorizations, and when is the current use case that we opt in for a Flow when we have the rest of the automation process in Apex. When is the use case that we dive in for Flow? And yes, every even though Salesforce has flows, and Flow is nothing but a automation process, even Flow has best practice. So it is best practices not only confined to your Apex class and triggers, but yes, it has to be followed in flows as well. And there are some advantages when we use a flow, when we compare to other tools that include some of the automation process that are present, and um, your Apex code. So yes, there is a few advantages, and we'll be discussing about that. And let's discuss and have the demo parallelly so that like we don't feel bored and things like that. Okay, so okay, so first, this is most of us might have known this, but if there is a beginner here, it's for them to know. Salesforce Flow is nothing but a powerful automation tool. I would like to highlight the word powerful here because let me eventually show you why we use the term powerful here. So it is a powerful tool that helps in customization of logic through point and clicks without using code. Yeah, it's the complexity of the logic and how we are going to break things down using a flow. And mainly here, flow is we are referring to is just with point and clicks, and not using much of codes, or very to be very close no code feature. And let's see how it works. So flow is also a part of Salesforce Flow. That is what I'm collecting. It also collects data and performs actions in the Salesforce work. So it covers a lot of things than we actually know about. And there are when we learn about Salesforce, there are a lot of features that we come across, and flow is one of them. And there are some chances that we might give less importance to flow and more important to Apex. I'm not telling that is you should not give importance to Apex. No, that is not my point here. What I'm trying to say is flow is like an unsung hero here. We can accomplish a lot of things using flow. So when I started, I was one among them. So I gave very least importance to flows, and I gave a lot of importance to Apex. And then now I feel flow is like, oh God, I would have used flows instead of going to an Apex for that. It would have made things simple. So that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so let's see the categorizations present in the flow. Flow is basically categorized into a screen flow, auto launch flow. So these are the, I can say that these are the broader categories in flow. And then the auto launch flow can be, again, have subdivisions like scheduled flow, auto launch flow, record triggered flow, and platform event triggered flow. So the to be very precise about the definition, to compare the to segregate a screen flow and an auto launch flow, basically the main difference here is a screen flow. An example, just to quote a use case, a screen flow can be compared relatively to a form that interacts with the user, namely getting some input. It works along with the user to get some input and work based on that input. So a screen flow, what it actually does, it does has the user interaction. So something with the end user is happening there. So that part a screen flow takes care of. And the auto launch flow is, as the name suggests, it doesn't do such things, but it doesn't mean it doesn't work on an input. Yes, it works on the input, but not like how a screen flow interacts with the end user or guides the end user with the steps and everything. So the same things doesn't happen with the auto launch flow. Of course, auto launch flow has its own things, characteristic traits. Let us see them as well here. So auto launch flow, as we know, it is categorized into further four subdivisions. So scheduled, auto launch flow, record triggered flow, platform event triggered flow. So in the auto launch flow, in the second line, as you're seeing, I have written like non-record triggered flow or no flow trigger. So what does it mean? Basically, here a record triggered flow, when the flow gets triggered when a record changes or when there is some change happening. It can be any kind of DML happening in a record. It can be an insert, it can be an update. So that kind of a thing happen, even deletion. So even that kind of thing happening in a record. But when you specifically talk about the kind of the auto launch flow, a subdivision of that, so it is not happening because some change in the DML or database is happening. It happens because another process or another flow calls it out. So another flow is like one say we have two flows, for example, flow A and B. Flow A is some changes or some criteria is going to get through there, or the criteria is met, and flow A is calling flow B. So in that case, it becomes an auto launch flow. A good example is like you can colloquially call it as a headless flow, because you don't start it from a record from a starting point. It is just called by another flow, and that flow will have a starting point, obviously. So that is what we call it as an auto launch flow with no flow trigger or non-record triggered flow, for categorization purpose and being specific. Next comes the platform event triggered flow and scheduled flow. So scheduled flow is basically nothing but we can schedule a flow, and this flow actually starts running when the particular time we have specified is met. So what we exactly try to make our point here is, so it runs from a specified time. So for one example I can give you is today is 25th of August 2022. So if you want to create a scheduled flow, you can create that flow and make it run for like from 25th of August 2022 to 25th of August 2023, which means technically the flow is going to run for a year. And when you obviously there will be there should be some frequency, right? It doesn't make sense we schedule a flow and we don't put some frequency. So it obviously has some frequency. So that frequency can be like once daily or weekly. Only these three conditions can be given. You cannot give a year or a bi-weekly or fortnight kind of thing. No, that is not happening. We can just give it once daily or weekly. So these things happen. So we schedule a flow for certain period of time, and then we put the or have a valid frequency for that to happen. So what daily, say like once the flow will run, or weekly the flow will be running, or you just in an entire year you can just make the flow scheduled flow run only once. So even we will not get a lot of use cases like that, but as Salesforce provides an option, even that is possible. That's what I'm trying to say here. And then platform event triggered flow. As we know, this is a platform event triggered flow. It's nothing but the flow gets triggered if some platform event is happening. So those, for those of you who are not very much into the platform event, or not more aware of that platform event, so it's nothing but some notifications coming inside your Salesforce org through an external system, or some kind of change that happened, and the platform event occurs. So those things we collectively call it as a platform event. And one good use case is like you get you have a web to case forms, and you just get your case through there, and then you have kept a platform event where it notifies a case has been coming, and that is assigned to a queue based on some requirement or some need. So in that case, that event we can make it as a platform event. And I know every one of us will know about the bell icon present in the Salesforce org, and you see in your, I think, the top right corner. So there it will be some notification popping up, and that will say, hey, hi, this is being assigned to this queue, and if I am the queue member, obviously it is going to get assigned to me. So that is a platform event, and this action can trigger from an external object or external source that is exactly not present inside Salesforce. So that is a platform event, and the flow that you are going to create inside Salesforce will get triggered if a platform event enters inside the Salesforce org. So this is what it means. So these are the broader and basic categorizations present in flow. And let's see a few things before we see the demo, so that we'll be clear about what we just saw and the examples. So, okay. So I am in my sample dev. I'm in the sales app, and I am currently in my homepage. So I hope everyone is able to see it. And what I have here is an application form. So I have kept an application, and an end user might come up, and I might give him an application form, basically this form, to be filled, so that the records are getting captured, and rest of the things are happening. So one question every one of us will have is, why should I do it here? I can just go directly and create the record from the object itself. What is the need here for us to have a form like this? Yeah, so the need here is, if you want to hide whatever is happening behind, you don't want the end user to see the rest of the things there, and you just want him to get the data in the form of just a simple form, then this is going to be the solution. Yes, of course, we can create Aura components and put it down here. We can create LWC components and put it down here. We can put the form, and we can also use VF. Yes, all these are present, but as we consider the time compatibility and rest of the things and deployment, a flow can be a quick solution for a simple use case that we have in hand currently. So this application form, the very purpose of this is just going to get the data from the applicant, and it's going to get stored in Salesforce. So that is the thing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill the form as like assuming like an end user, and then how the rest of the things happen. So the application form here, and I'm just going to fill the data here. So as we see, there are some values here. I've just filled the value, and I'm just going to give a next. So the form is going to just get refreshed, and it's just going to get cleared again. So yeah, so now after the thing is complete, my previous record is stored in an object called application here. So the application object, I have a custom object here in my org, and it is going to hold custom fields like contact number, email address, application name, level, owner, and a few more, say enrollment date and a few more things. So these are the values there. So now if I want to just go see the application, yeah, I'm just going to see a list view. So here we have something called a student two that we just filled. And the student two is going to hold the values that we just gave through the form. So yeah, so student two, it has some owner, it is the level as UG, we have given some contact number and the address. So yeah, all these things happening here. So what we have done is we have just got the input from a form and saved it to a Salesforce custom object inside Salesforce, and we are just viewing the record from the list view. So this is what we are doing. So this the back things that we are doing behind the screen is nothing but we have just kept basically this application form that you see. Okay, let me go to that page again for a minute. Yeah, so the application form, the simple application form that we are seeing is nothing but a screen flow. So what the screen flow does is, as the name says, it's going to get some input from the user, and then it's going to put that input into a application object, custom object present in the Salesforce org. So that is what its purpose, and it's doing that. So let's quickly go and see how the entire process happens. So here I have a screen flow. I've just created a flow. The basic steps will be like we'll be going to a flow and then create new flow button, and then it'll ask for the types, which types you want. If we can choose screen flow, and then we can put a screen here, and it'll look like something of this sort. And this is the part where we need to put some effort and attention here, because as you see, this application form and the entire context visible here is much similar to what we saw in the home page. Okay, let me quickly go to the home page again. Yeah, so this is much similar to what we saw in the home page here. So in order to achieve this format that the end user is seeing, we are doing the same thing inside. Sorry, team, I'm just switching off screens and tabs. So yeah, so we are just placing things here so that both of them are identical. So whatever you give here is going to get reflected there. So how we are achieving it? So basically, I'm just naming this header tab to an application form tab so that this rename and values present here is getting reflected there. And of course, it has an API name, like how we have the label name and API name whenever we create a custom field in an object. So it behaves in a similar way. And then I have some input fields here. These input fields here are nothing but it is very similar to a data type while you create a field in Salesforce object. So that in the similar way, we'll be just creating the choosing the data type, just dragging and dropping it down or the wherever place we want, and then start filling it. So let's take an example here. So if I want an email, I'm just quickly going to choose email here and then drag it and drop it here. So once after that part is done, we'll be supposed to provide an API name, a label, and then placeholders are nothing but what you see here, q at example.com. So whatever is present here, the placeholder, just very similar to an HTML placeholder, it behaves in the same way. And then you can make it as a required field, like how we create a field and make it as required in Salesforce object. It works similar. And then sales set compact visibility. So the component visibility is nothing but like if you want to restrict someone to from seeing it, or if you want to give someone, I mean, the extra access to see this, you can specify it here. And if you don't have something, just skip it out. So yeah, these are the things. And even someone will be having the question, can I keep validation and rest of the things? Yeah, even that is possible. Let me just show you one example for that. Yeah. So here we have something called as validate input. So this validate input will behave like a validation rule. So if we give the wrong value or the value that we don't require, then we can put that condition in or criteria here and make a error message visible. It also includes help text. Basically, we'll be seeing help text, right? When we give when we create a Salesforce field, yeah, that is even possible. So it is very similar to how we create a field in a SF object. So yeah, so the screen captures this. So the screen is designed like this. It doesn't still yet it doesn't talk about data or something. It is just going to talk or describe about how it is going to look and feel for the end user who is going to give values here. So this is what it is going to look, and this is how we are developing things here. Next comes the important part is create records. So once, as you see, once the screen flow is kept and the form, the layout or the predefined things which we want it to be, and we have designed, once after we have designed that, how the end user sees things after we have designed that, we'll be creating records so that the data entered from an end user is carried to a Salesforce object and it gets reflected there. So for that purpose, we are creating a record. Okay, now how do we create? So what we are doing, we are just choosing the one input will create one record. So that formula we are using here. So we are getting one, and some we are specifying the literals, everything. This part I'll cover as I go down. I mean, go down or below, and then object. So which object is going for which object the record the end user is capturing through a screen is going to get created. So I am choosing that object, and we have a custom object, so I'm choosing it there. And here comes the most important one. What values present in the screen fields has to be mapped to the actual fields present in there as a Salesforce custom object. So this is what we are trying to do here. So whatever that we see in this side, maybe in your left side, is nothing but the custom fields present in the object. And whatever we are seeing it on the right side is nothing but the screen component. Screen components are nothing but the fields or field lookalike things that we just created before the step. So these are the things. So basically, this right side thing is going to cover nothing but these values. So we are just mapping it down. We are telling Flow to map the value that is present, or the values we obtained through the form, to map it down to the custom fields present in the custom object, so that once after the value is given and provided, it is getting stored and we are able to see the record inside the Salesforce. So that is the main part here happening, is like in create record is this. So here we are using two things. We are using the screen flow, and then we are going to use this create record. So Salesforce, I mean, Flow has this thing like create records, update records, get records, and delete records. We'll see all of them eventually in this session, and regarding flows and related to flows. So create records is what we are choosing. And how did we choose? We are just going to give the add, and here it will show interaction as screen or action or subflow, and then the logic if you want to have any logic assignment there, and then in the data it will have create records, and we are just going to pick it up and then put things like how I have implemented already. So this is how it works. So this is a simple screen flow that enables us to capture the data and then place it inside Salesforce. So this is one example, and let's see the examples one after the other. So one more example that we would like to discuss here is about the auto launch flow and record triggers flow. So the auto launch flows are nothing but, as I told you before, it is going to be we have four categories in there, and one of the thing is like a process builder or some other automation process. It can be even a flow. So um, it is going to call the current flow that we are using, or the flow that is going to be present here. So as you see, the process type, if it is a screen flow, it is going to show a screen flow. If it is an auto launch flow, it is going to show as an auto launch flow. So inside the auto launch flow, we'll be having the categories that I just said or spoke about or discussed or present in the PPT. So let me uh, redirect us to the auto launch flow. So this is going to be okay. Okay, so this flow is being called by another what to say, another automation process. So give me a minute, team. Okay, sorry, I was in the wrong flow. Yeah, so this flow is called by a process builder. I will also show you the process builder and how the process builder behaves to call this workflow. I mean, the flow builder. So as a start, as it specifies, it is going to specify it as an auto launch flow. If it is a screen, then it will show a screen. If it is a record triggered, it will show as record trigger. So from that itself, we can, if you're opening an existing functionality of a flow, from the start itself, you can understand what type of flow it is. So that's how it works. So, and then this is going to delete records. So in this flow, we'll be seeing the auto launch flow and how the delete record functionality is going to work. So basically, when you want to delete a record, you just have to pass the ID. That is a very simple. It's not so complicated like an, I would not say complicated. It is not going to have so much things like you when you update a record, because when you update a record, you need to specify which field is getting updated and everything. So if it is an object, then fields are going to come into play. But with respect to deletion, deletion doesn't specify anything. Just delete the record, pass the ID, done. That is it. So the same thing we are following here. I'm just going to specify the ID and delete it. Okay, here you'll be having like two questions. What's this record ID and why is it being assigned here? Let me clarify it here. So what happens is, let's start from the start, meaning let's start from the process builder. Let me quickly go to the process builder. Okay, before I go there, I'll also open the class object wherein this flow is working on, or it is entitled to work on. Give me a minute. Okay, I have a custom object and I'm opening that and I'm again going to set up and I'm going to just show the process builder that is initially starting up the entire process here. Yeah, this was the message that I told you before. And this is the process builder that is going to, like start our flow. Let's see what the process builder does. Okay. So basically, as we all know, a process builder has some requirement. I mean, like some object it should work on. It is very obvious, like how a Apex trigger or things work. It basically needs an object telling that technically, meaning it is going to start from there. So the same way I'm going to, I have specified the object as class. Class is nothing but a custom object present in my org. And when does, as I have specified the object, when should I trigger the process builder? When you're creating a record or when you're editing it, or it's like both the cases. So here for our demo purpose, I have chosen it less when the record is getting created or edited. So in both the cases, this process builder is going to fire on which object? On class object. And what is the criteria that I have from all these things. I can choose anything I want, or it is no criteria, just fire it off. I can even specify that, but I have just kept a criteria. So just for making it a little more spicy. So this is like I have a field called test, and that field equals boolean true. So when that is a checkbox field, I'll show you how it looks and the rest of the things from the class object eventually. So that checkbox field, if that checkbox becomes true, then something is going to happen. What's going to happen? Immediately, it is going to call a flow. So this flow is nothing but the deletion flow that we discussed in this screen. So this is going to um, call the flow. So just because the process builder is calling it, we call it as an auto launch flow. So it is going to get auto launched because of the process builder. And we are passing something here. Okay, so let me tell what is it. We have something called as a flow variable here, and we have a record ID, and something is referencing, and something is happening. So just to know what it is, let's quickly go to the flow. And here, as you see, I have something called as a variable. I've created a flow variable, and it is a text space, and it is going to hold a value like a record ID. It is going to, the name of it is record ID, and what it is going to hold is nothing but the record IDs. So as we are talking, it is going to delete a record. We need to tell Salesforce, I mean the flow or the process builder, which record do I want to delete. In our case, whichever record meets the criteria that we have specified is going to come inside, and it is going to get deleted, because that is how we have designed the flow and the process builder. So I have created a variable, I have named it as record ID, and I have just made it available for input and output. So this shows that availability outside the flow. Availability outside the flow is nothing but you can use the variable not only inside this flow, although it is created inside flow. Technically, you can use it outside the flow, which means like how we have called the same record ID value in the process builder. So I have just created it and have made it available, and I've just clicked it on. That's it. So now again, going to the process builder, the flow variable record ID is there, and I'm just assigning something. What am I assigning? I'm assigning the record's ID here. So whichever record met the criteria will come here, and this will be assigned. The ID of that specific record is assigned to the flow variable here. Why am I doing this? Because as you want to delete the record, the deletion here involves the ID. You need to specify the ID for which the record will be deleted inside the Salesforce org. And of course, we can see it in the recycle bin. I can show you that as well. So yeah, so just for this purpose, we are using. So you're passing the ID so that that can get deleted. And this record ID is going to hold the value of the record that met the criteria present in the process builder earlier. I hope the team is clear. So this is what we are doing. Okay, so with the condition specified, it is just given as test. Let me show. Go to the class object and the fields here, and let me show. Yeah, so total percent more than 40. So that is the label, and this is the API name. So this is going. If this is a checkbox, so when I check it out and it is going to be true, then the record is going to get deleted. So let's see it here. I have the classes object, and let's create a sample record. So as you see, there are like three records already present. Now I'm going to enter the fourth record, and it has some record types. Just let's just ignore it for now, and let me give it as 10. So the class name is like 10 standard and total present more than 40. I'm just checking this checkbox. Okay, let's not check it now. Let's have it because the flow is going to get fired. I mean, the process builder is going to get fired whenever the record is, created and edited in both the cases. So first, let's create it and let me show you how it behaves. So I have just created a record, and then currently it is unchecked. The criteria is not met. So the process builder eventually and the flow will not be triggered. So I'm just saving it now. Now again, let's go to classes and see how many records are present. Earlier there was three, and now we have added one, and that's going to be four records present. Again, let's go to the same record, and now let's, make it as true. So this is going to fire the process builder, which in turn is going to call the auto launched flow that we created, and the flow is going to, because the ID is passed to the flow through the record ID variable, it is going to delete the record. So let's give a save. Yeah, we have received an error message. So the requested source does not exist, meaning our flow run successfully and the record is deleted. Let's again go to the class, and now let's see the list view. As you see, the record is not present here anymore because it is deleted. The deletion flow purpose is like it's going to delete the record if it meets a particular criteria. Just to check it, let's quickly go to the switch to the classic mode and see the recycle bin just to ensure our flow or process builder was triggered, which in turn called the flow and things run successfully. Yeah, it is present. So things got deleted at this time. So this is how the auto launched flow, along with the deletion part to delete records, uh, run. So this is how it works. So we have covered two things here, basically. Okay, and so deletion, contact, and we can even call the uh, assignment. I mean, like we can even get a queue, and then we can assign records to the queue. And someone might ask me, "Hey, hi, are you mad? And what is the purpose of having assignment rule?" Yep, I'll get back to that question. So with assignment rules, and we can make a record call the apex method, and then someone will come up and say, you said flows can work individually, and why are you calling the apex now? I'm just telling it can also integrate with an apex code and then make things work if you have an apex code. So this flow can act as a trigger without you actually writing a trigger. This flow can act as that part and call an apex class and do the things that an apex class actually does. But that doesn't mean you should always create an Apex class and call it the flow. No, I'm not suggesting flow as an alternative to Apex trigger. I'm just telling it can also, the flows have the capacity to even call an apex. So that is my point here. Let me be clear about that. And it can also get inside a custom metadata technically, meaning it's just going to call the custom match data and work there. So we have such three example. Let's see one by one. So what actually happens here in this flow? Oh my bad. Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be an example where we are just going to assign a record to a queue. Someone might come up and ask me, why are we doing this? We have assignment rule for this purpose. Yes, of course. The very purpose of having an assignment rule is to assign things when the criteria is met to an owner. But as we all know, assignment rule is for class and I'm sorry, it's for lead and case. It's not for any custom objects. So if in case you get an a requirement of assigning things for other objects other than lead and case, you can surely go in for a flow and make that work based on some criteria and change the owner to a queue or whoever we want to as per our use case. So basically, in this case, there'll be two things we need to notice. One, the creator of the record and the owner will be different, right? Because we're assigning it to a queue. So owner becomes different and creator becomes different. So that is something we need to keep in mind. And this example that we're going to see is good example of an auto launch flow, meaning a subdivision of the record triggered flow. So record triggered flow is going to be the starter, or it's going to kickstart the flow. So it's going to trigger the flow. So how it is going to trigger? Let's see it. So up in the application objects, we have kept some criteria. So in most of the cases, we'll be specifying the object because when something has to happen inside Salesforce, then it should have a head point, right? So let's assume this is object. So, and when do we want this flow to get triggered? It's on a created or edited, or how do you want it? So this is something a record is deleted. So this is something present. This feature is something that we should note, and it is present only in flow and not any other, not in a workflow or something. So you can't see the same thing there. So a record is getting created or updated. I have just specified the criteria here, and then I have some, some criteria here. So when the level equals this value, so the level is something we saw in the application form. It is a field. It is a pick list field in the custom object, and it is in the UI. It's just it also works as a, or it is much. It looks as a pick list. You can also have it as radio button if you want. That's something present in flow as an extra data type. That is there as well. I'm just giving an FYI. So yeah, this is the field present in the custom object, and we're just going to map it out. And then what are we doing here? So the fast feed updates and actions and related records. So for someone who is very much familiar with Apex class and triggers, this seemed to be much similar to the before and after triggers. So if there is going to be a record update on the same object that caused the flow to run, then it's going to be your before triggers. And if you're going to do some update or change that is going to be related to the related object that actually caused the flow to run, then it acts as an after trigger. So that is what we see as actions and related records. And the fast feed update here is the same object that triggered the flow. So that is how it behaves. I just wanted to put a note and say like an FYI. So here I'm just going to do some update only on the same object, which means like the owner change is going to happen on the same record that triggered the flow. So I have kept as fast field updates. So I have chosen fast field updates and get it done. So this is starting, and as we go down, we'll be saving all the things. And get record in the data, get record is an option that we have. So I have chose that, and I'm going to get a record. Here someone will ask me, what record are you going to get? I'm not going to get the record that triggered the flow, but I'm going to get the record of the queue. Someone might ask me, hey, hi, are you gone mad? Is there any issue so that you are getting a record of the queue? Yes, this is not actually that. What I'm trying to say is you are going to get the specific queue that is present in your Salesforce org and hold it just to ensure that the owner of the record that you're trying to change will be that queue. You need to tell Salesforce flow that this is the queue that you want to assign. For that, in order to specify that queue, we are getting that queue first so that we can use it in the assignment later on, next few steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the queue first. How am I getting the queue? The object is group. So as we always know, the start part of anything will be an object because that is where things start. So object is group. Someone might ask me like, why are we creating a queue and then specifying it as a group? As we know, when we in the back end you start querying things out, the queues will be present in the object called as group. So that is how the behavior is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the group here, considering the group as an object, and then I'm going to choose the developer name. So what is the developer name here? The developer here is nothing but the queue name. So the developer name equals the queue name, the name of the queue. So name of the queue is also something like a variable that we initially saw in the previous flow called as a record ID. So let me show that variable and how this variable behaves. So the variable is a text data type, and it is also available for input and output outside the flow, and I have kept a default value called as UG mentor. What is the default value? This default value is nothing but the name of the queue. I'm just holding this in the name of the queue, nothing else. So let me show the queue here. Yeah, this is the queue. So this is the queue. The name of the queue is UG mentor, and it is for the application object, and it is going to hold some of the users that I have added here. That is a very simple queue. And we are just going to, okay, let me close the unwanted tabs here. Yeah, so I have just kept the value as UG mentor. So in the get records, we have what we got is like we got the name of the queue. And once the name of the queue is obtained, we are just going to in the developer name, we are just going to change it and put the queue and the value there. And then what we are doing is the main part, assign owner ID. So what does this do? This assign owner ID is nothing but we're just assigning things. So in the get is also there, and we have a functionality to do assignment, right? I think most of us will be clear with that part. Let me drag it on a little. Yeah, and what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to assign it. So using the assignment operation present, I'm just going to assign it. How am I assigning? So whatever record that met my criteria and has come inside the flow or that triggered the flow, so that record's owner ID will be the group's ID. So meaning here the queues that I used it around here. Yeah, the get queue, the variable that I used and the ID. So that is how it will be behaving. Yeah, so here we go. It is going to hold the group from get queue and the group ID value. So the group from get queue is nothing but this is the get queue, and it is going to take the group from get queue and this. So someone may ask why there is three steps. We can do it in two steps, directly assigning things instead of getting and doing all these things. Yeah, you can do, but in future, if the group name changes, or if you want to do the same thing, or if you want to replicate the same thing to some other queue, say sales queue, service queue, in some cases happens, then in that case you don't have to go keep your hands on the flows. That is not at all needed. We can just go to the queue here and we can just change the default name. We can change the name of the queue and make this work. It'll also run efficiently like how it worked for the previous queues and other things. So we are not going to like how we use custom metadata. We don't override IDs. I mean, we don't overuse IDs or hard code IDs and then directly do things. We put things on a place and then we call it from here. So that if there is any changes in the future, we don't have to intrude on the currently perfectly working Apex code, but instead we'll just change or make the small changes in the customer data value and keep it running for long. So this is just a small update that we can do instead of going and changing the entire thing, the current code. So generally we won't do that thing. Something is running perfectly, and why would I want to just go disturb it for no matter, for just a small fix? So this can be done to this way itself. So just go and change the value in the variable. So that's how it works. So this is one good example, and to show the to show the how it behaves and everything. Okay, give me a minute, thing. I'm just trying to, yeah. Let me go to the app and the sales app and show how it behaves. So we just captured records to screen flow, and when you saw that in the same record will be assigned, the owner will be the UGQ or the UG level person. So that will be assigned. We are assigning to that queue. Let me show it. Yeah. So for the student, the owner ID and created by is different because I created through a screen form, and then I mean screen flow, and the owner is UG mentor because it met the criteria of level is equal to UG. If we have didn't skip or we have made the level value or skipped the level without giving an input, or made it as PG, the criteria would have failed, and the owner will be in the created by and the owner will be same. So that will be the case. So just because the flow worked and it got triggered, you're able to see it as it's a UG mentor. So this is an example for auto launch type record triggered flow with calling or utilizing the queues. So this is one example. Then we have something called as headquarters flow. Let me show what the purpose is. So So how do we access the custom metadata using a flow? So that part we have covered. So this is also a good example of record triggered flow and how we are accessing the custom metadata. So here the entire flow starts in an account and it is getting created or updated, so that is the case. So I have a I have specified criteria where the billing country is not equal to null, so the flow gets triggered if the billing country is not equal to null. So this is something I have kept as a condition. And when to run the flow for updated records, this I think some of you will be familiar with these two conditions. So every time a record is updated and meets the condition, only when a record is updated to meet the condition. So these two things is much similar to what we have as an evaluation criteria in workflow. So the very difference between the second and third. So the second criteria fires every time there is a change, even it includes the you're not touching the exact field that met the criteria. It is anyway going to fire even if there's any change that the other than the field also it's going to fire if it's just going to meet the criteria. And the third is nothing but it's only going to fire if it meets the criteria. So early in the previous save itself, if the criteria has been met, then it's not going to fire it again. So we can say it whenever the condition has become false and then again made it true, so this is going to fire only that time. Mostly developers will be like preferring this option because you don't want your DML to be wasted for nothing. So if a student is coming and he is entering his details and saving things, and a task for him is created, so he's going to be a case or some other thing in your org, and a task is getting created, then it is being notified just as notification thing. And again the student forgot something, and then he's coming to he's a 12th grade student and that is a criteria. So the criteria is met, and again he's coming and he's changing his address or a few things. You don't want to keep creating tasks for everything, every edit that a student makes. So basically it doesn't make sense. So there are some criteria where you might want to create even if there is any edit, so that is totally different. But generally, in general, we'll not waste the DMLs and keep creating tasks. So even if it's just because he forgot something doesn't mean we'll be having 10 to 15 tasks. If he makes 15 edits, then we'll be having 15 tasks. So that thing we don't want to happen. So because because of that, we'll be preferring to the next criteria and not this one. So just here we are doing a demo for learning part. I have just one and we are proceeding with that. So this is the start part, and this is something called as get records. So the get records that is going to act as something called as we saw in the previous flow. It's going to get the previous flow got the queue, and this flow is getting the custom metadata. And someone might ask me how we are telling it is a custom metadata when you have chosen an object as locations. Yes, I have a custom metadata, and the name of that is locations. So just to for the identification purpose, a normal object will be a standard object will have just the name, and the rest of the custom object will have the plural name. But when you go in for a custom metadata, you can easily identify it with this underscore, like and instead of underscore c or underscore x, like external object, we can identify it as underscore mdt, meaning custom metadata. So that is what it does. And I'm going to have a label. So label equals billing country record dot billing country. So this is my criteria here, and what it does is it's going to work for the first record, and I'm just going to map field. So basically, I've just accessed the um, custom metadata through this part. And for the label, I'm just assigning the custom metadata's label will be the billing country. The records that the account record that has a specific value on the billing country, I am assigning to the custom metadata label. Let me show how that custom metadata is before we proceed further, just to give you more clarity on that. Okay, let me go to the custom metadata. So I have a customer data here as called locations. So even here we have specified the same thing. In the get records, I have specified as location, and there is a specific criteria that building country equals label. Let me quickly go and give managed records so that we can see what is specific the label. So yeah, we have some values like India, UK, USA. So these are the custom metadata records, and label locations are the specific custom fields that are present in the custom metadata. As we know, it acts similar to an object. So yeah, the label is India, the location's name is also India, and the sublocation is Chennai. So I have a field, I've kept a field where it has the name is sublocation, and it is being marked as Chennai. Let me tell you the purpose of this when we delve into it. So I'm just I'm just checking here if the billing countries equals the label. If that is happening, if that is true, then I'm going to do something. So I'm going to do update record. And what I'm updating here, I'm just updating the I'm having some filter here. This filter is nothing but the ID that the record ID that triggered the entire process. And what I'm going to change is I'm going to just I have taken the locations from get country sublocation. That is also a variable. I'll show you what the variable does. And then whatever value the variable is holding, I'm just assigning to a field called as headquarters present in the account. So headquarters is a custom field present in the account. So let me show this for the purpose of the variable here. Yeah, so this is what we saw. So it is just going to hold the label value, I mean the billing country value here, and it is going to get populated there. And again, it is being called here. So from the locations from country, it is going to be called, and the sublocation. Sublocation is nothing but a field present in the custom metadata that is going to get populated in the headquarters custom field present in student. So you might feel a bit not in sync. If I show the demo, then it'll be like very perfect what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to create a test account here. So make it as a test account. And I'm just going to save it. So a test account got created. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to update it. So this will fire in a create and update in both the cases. So I'm just going to edit the billing address, and I'm going to choose the billing country because that is the criteria we have kept. The billing country is not null. So the billing country is not going to be null now, and I am specifying it as India. So once I have made it as India, then the value called as the headquarters present in the account object will get populated as Chennai. As the customer data holds here, the sublocation is Chennai, and from the sorry, from the flow here, we are trying to do that. So this is what we're trying to do. So this is going to access the customer data, find the label, get the sublocation of that part, and going to assign it to the headquarters field. So that is what we are trying to do here. So and then I'm going to click a save. So currently the headquarters is null, and it is going to now get filled as Chennai, because in as the customer data we have choose Chennai. So somewhat meant ask like this can be done very simply using a multi-pick list or pick list or different pick list. Why go for a customer data? Good question. So we are going in for a customer data, as we all know. If there are any triggers or if there are any changes going to come up in future, you can just simply change the values in the custom metadata and easily work through it or walk through it. And whatever that includes whatever apex triggers or class that we already have is not going to get affected. So we don't have to rework on the entire things that are dependent on the same. Instead of that, we can just change the value present in the customer data and go further. So that is the purpose we are using. And in this flow, we have specifically seen like how we are able to access the custom metadata using the get records. Get records basically gets anything you want to. It includes customer data here and also the queue that we saw in the previous example. And then updates if like however we want it to be done based on the use case. So this is how the record triggered flow for that access the customer data works. And one more simple example that we would like to discuss here as part of today is how a flow can call the Apex actions or Apex, mainly Apex method here. So I'm just telling flow can even do that. That is what I'm trying to say. So how it is happening. So basically, we are going to what we are going to see as use cases in the account object whenever it is getting created. If the active equals yes, so that is a field, and if it is active, so the account is active, then something should happen. And I have here used the not the before triggers but the after triggers, meaning something related to it is getting done. So getting is related to it is getting created or updated or something of the sort. A related record. There is some change in the related record. So that is what we are trying to do here. And after this, after specifying this, we have just used an I mean like we have specified the name of action present in the Apex class here. I mean, the Apex class here, exactly. So that is what we are doing. So do we specify that? We'll be just going here. You can just choose the action, and inside the action, it will show the category. Let's pick it as type and then go to the Apex action here. And whatever Apex action that you have here will come. Then some of you might wonder if you have 20 Apex actions, only three is showing. There is a reason for it, and let's discuss that eventually. Okay, so we'll have a list of things, list of Apex actions there. So let me quickly go to the Apex action. Okay, so whenever you want to have an Apex action to be called from a flow, in that case, there are some set of things that we need to keep in mind. We have to make it as an invocable method. So if you want this method to be called, then you should make it as an invocable method. And for an entire Apex class, only one invocable method can be present. You can't have three or four methods and make them all invocable. No, that is not happening. We can only have one for an Apex class. So that is a kind of a rule. And that invocable method, I'm sorry, that method basically should have the public static thing or global static thing. It cannot be private or something. So it should be public so that it can be accessed through a flow. And what we are doing is we are just passing something. There is a parameter here. This basically this method gets a parameter, and the name of the parameter is record ID. And what the record ID does is nothing but it's going to create a task. With the help of this, we are going to create a task. Let's see what we're doing. We are just having a list, and with the help of an instance, we are creating a task specifying the status, subject, and a few things. So what ID is nothing but it is going to relate task to a account. So to in order to relate that, I need to know the account ID, and just to capture the account ID, I'm using this record ID. So whatever is going to present, the whatever ID that is going to be present is going to be the account ID. Here, the account ID is nothing but whatever, whichever record that triggered the flow will be captured here, and task will be created, and we are inserting it. So this is just a small and a simple example of how we can even call an Apex method and using a flow and do things. So let me quickly go to the thing, and since I have just kept it as created, so this is going to fire only during the creation time and not going to fire during the updation time. We, Know these things. So let's just keep it as test account 2 sample, and I'm going to mark it as active. Active is equal to yes. Now, when I click save, a related task will be created based on the subject and everything we provided. Okay, so in the activity in the task, we are seeing something called as we have an upcoming task, and active account task is that, and it will hold values that we specified through the Apex class. So the status should be in progress, subject should be active account. Let's quickly go and see if it has the same. Yeah, status is in progress related to this account because that is the ID which we passed using the record ID, and the subject is active account task. So that is something that we need to discuss. And here, the account ID, the record ID which is showing here is nothing but the ID or the parameter that is present inside your action. So that is what is being shown here, and you can just make it include and click a done and save. So that is how it works. And this is also a good example of record triggered flow. So basically, you just keep create a flow, choose as record triggered, and start working on it to achieve whatever functionalities we want. So this is how it works. And before we jump into the PPT, so this is the application form that I kept in the home page. So how do you keep it? You just go to your Lightning App Builder, edit it, drag and drop the flow component, and inside the flow component, you're going to specify which flow it is. It is a very simple process, so we're not delving into it deep. I'm just giving it as a FYI kind of thing. So yeah, that is what we do there. And seeing all the flows and use cases, basically when do we use a flow? So basically we can use a flow for like field update, task creation, and guided user interaction, and how we just got input from the end users. So all these are small examples wherein like we use a flow. And as we also see, we took a record and user clicks are there. Some interaction and inputs from the user is involved. So in all the cases, and form is one good simple example of achieving the screen flow, and how we utilize the screen flow to the function to make the functionality of forms work. So these are the small things that we do. And as we know, flows can even update related and unrelated objects. So when we consider workflow does a field update only from child to parent, that too only in MD relationship. Lookup is not going to support there, and we cannot do the parent to child update. Process builder supports that, and flow even supports creation and things of the unrelated objects like updation. So it even supports that. And there are more features like the old values. So someone might ask, I have the trigger.old map or trigger.old the list. It's going to capture to hold the previous state of the record. So similar to that, we have here is nothing but we have even the old value. So prior record, when you go to a flow, you can see something called as prior record. So prior record is nothing but it is going to capture and hold the old state of the record. So prior record is not the record that is present previous or before that in the list view. No, that is not the case. It is going to show the nature of the record in the previous state. So that is what we are trying to say here. And as we know, it is a point and click mechanism. So something has to be done in a shorter period of time with less, I'll not say less amount of work, but shorter period of time. But you can feel the less amount of work part when you deploy things. Because when we go in for Apex class, we'll be deploying three things: Apex class, Apex test class, and the trigger or something that triggers the Apex class. So when we do the same thing, achieve the same thing through flow, we'll be just deploying only the flow and not the Apex class, test class, and the trigger that does it. So these are some small features, and automatically the flow, if you want to update Apex class, we're just going to change and make changes there. So flow is something that has versions. So if you can, from a developer perspective, you can just create a version and then start doing things, and then you can create one more version and do some different things. And if you feel no, that is not working or that is not good, you don't have to keep clicking control z until you get back to the state, or you have to store something in higher or keep a notepad, copy paste the entire thing and save it. What you can easily do is you can just delete the version that you don't want, and you can start working on the previous version that was already working fine and things like that. So that is a very flexible functionality from a dev side that helps dev people with through flows. So that is something like we need to appreciate. Yeah, as we all know, the all the actions, we just saw create, delete, and update. It can also be used for emails, quick actions, and you submit for approvals, and all these can be done. So submit for approval, generally we do it using a button, but instead of that, we can even call a submit for approval action, so that the record, if it meets the criteria, it automatically submits itself for approval, so that you don't want the end user to click the submit for approval button. So that can also be done, and it is also available in process. So those are the things. And coming to talk and mainly focus on best practices, everything inside Salesforce will have best practices. Even it includes the smallest thing in that's like creating an object. We don't create an object called test 1 2 3. That practice dev don't follow that, because it's like a bad practice. Numbers and having things makes sense. So I mean, like values that doesn't make sense should not be present. So similarly, even developing a flow also has best practices that we need to keep in mind before we do. So plan out things like, it is always good to plan before we start everything. It is not only for the flow, it is also we do the same thing for the Apex classes also. Similarly, let's plan out so that how the things goes, and developing in a small environment and migrating to the higher orgs. Never hard code IDs. It is not only in the Apex class that you must follow. It is something that even in flows we need to keep in mind. Never ever hard code IDs. That is a very bad practice we do. So we should never do that. And provide error handler mechanism. So someone who is very efficient in Apex will come up with a question called, I have try catch mechanism here. What do we have here to handle the UI exception, or say if I am trying to update a list and that list it is empty, and it is going to the flow is going to stop running, and I'm going to get a UI exception stating the list is empty or something of that sort. In order to manage all these things, we can make a decision box, utilize a decision box, and uh, make that if the things are true, then something is happening, and if it's a false, at least a validation error or something is going to get thrown. So we can make things like that, small things like that, and make it work in that way, instead of having the end user facing blankly cold UI exception on a space. Instead of that, this can be done. We can utilize the decision box and do things. So even that can be done. Often what we do is, often we forget to save things, because we get very familiar with Apex and we just do this control Z to get the previous things, and we almost forget to save the flow. So let's not do it. Let's keep saving it so that the version is available for editing, and it is also like you start doing things in the next manner, and we don't have any blockers. So that is something we need to do. And resting data access profiles, yes, that is also is possible, because that is what I discussed about the set component visibility. So set components visibility will help us to make the component visible based on some specific profile roles or permission set. So set component visibility in the screen flow is going to help us for that. So that can be used. And while we dragged and dropped the I mean, not the screen flow. When we dragged and dropped using the lightning component, we had the there will be an option called set component visibility, so that you make the form visible to specific set of users. So when we start using forms and all, whom it should be visible becomes a question. So that can be done using the set component visibility. And having subflow is also a good practice for managing the issue. So if some condition is met, or based on one condition something should happen, and based on next condition something should happen, and that flow will be extended. So that is how a subflow literally works. And test as many permutations of your flow as possible. This is because we don't write test classes here how we write in Apex, but in turn we can test the permutations using the debug. Either we can do it in the UI itself, like how we just created, and there is also another process to in the available called as debug. So in the debug, it's not going to make any changes on the record similar to a test class. We can just roll it back. We can give values and then make it run, and if there is some error or exception, we'll be getting an email. If it is completed, we can see it here. So this is how this finished, and no changes were made to the particular record, and the flow was executed. Things happen, and they are also coming up with I mean, Salesforce is also coming up with convert to test. So this is like going to be something a beta trial or something. So they just have an on for, and using this also we can test small things we can test. It is not completely available like a debug again. It is just something they're coming up with. So yeah, that is also present. Okay, now this important part why SF dev starting maybe like from scratch will want to go in for a flow when compared to other tools because of the maintenance and the version controls and the toolbox, just drag and drop things. So all those functionality, and we don't have to write a test class specifically. That might save some time during deployment and also during the creation of the process. And these are something that can be done. And code like functionality, why are we specifying it like this? Because even though we don't code inside the flow, code like function, because whatever things, the after triggers, before triggers, the old value, whatever things that we actually see in triggers and Apex classes, we are we are seeing something not exactly the same, but still we are able to cover 60 to 70%. We are able to replicate the 60 to 70% of the same thing inside the flow. So that is why we tell it as code like functionality. And this is all about the advantages of the flow. And I would like to happily announce that MST is hiring. So people interested, please take a screenshot, and you have the QR code in your hand. Just navigate and you can submit your applications here. So this is something we would like to inform you as a surprise gift or something after attending this community meetup. Okay, so demo is what we just saw, and we are open to queries. Anything you want to ask, team? You have some queries?
Hi, Harini.
Hi. Yeah,
So I
please
have
go
one
ahead.
doubt.
Uh-huh.
So how we can redirect after submitting a form to a link or a account record page like that? So is there any default action in Flow?
Oh, you want to redirect from somewhere else to somewhere else. Is I'm right? You are in different screen and you want to redirect it to flow, right? Is that your question? Am I getting it right?
Um,
Mhm.
so in screen flow, we have a form, right? So after
Yeah,
clicking the
yeah.
submit button, I have to redirect my form page to the account creator page. So like that, is there any default action?
It is not like we will be able to get it through a default action. We might do some little bit of customizations, like in the get record, you can use that get record. Okay, you are telling about a page, right? Even in that case, you can't directly give the URL. We can, when you
Yes.
create a input variable or something, we use text, right? In that, we'll have some data types present, characters, numbers. So in that case, we can give a
Yes.
URL, copy, paste it, and make after that thing, after you submit the records, we can call that get records and make it re-render. There will be some, we need to do some customizations from our end, but like I am just giving a vivid idea of how it will be or how it will work.
Okay, then. Thank
Yeah. Any questions, team? Any more?
Yeah, I do have one question.
Uh-huh.
In Trigger, we have add error method where you can add error, like validation rule. We can have it in Trigger. Can we have same in Flow Trigger?
Okay, here flow trigger, you're referring to the flow that we are using, right? Yeah, you're creating, right? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Instead of that, we'll be having the actions, and like I showed you a specific specific field that you create in a screen flow, or the screen component that created have
No,
the adding error or value. That
okay.
that is that is that is the thing that can be done.
Okay, no, I was thinking about flow trigger. Like,
Hmm.
on insert or update, we have delete. If suppose I wanted to add some validation, I can use validation rule or a trigger.
Hmm.
So can I have same kind of validation error but using flows? Like, do we have such a functionality? But using flow trigger, not the screen flow.
Okay, you're asking with the flow trigger. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. I don't think that part is currently that part is I don't think that can happen.
Okay.
Even if you write a validation rule, it will be like calling that validation rule. So you can instead like using a flow trigger. I don't think it is like 100% achievable.
Okay, okay. And one more question,
Mhm.
like what can be a criteria or scenario where I have to use Apex class and I should not use Flow, like any kind of scenario you have gone through or any.
No, no, it will not like should not it will not be a case, because like that
Mhm.
the admin team will be very comfortable with flow, and dev team will be obviously comfortable with trigger. So in that case, it
Yeah,
depends on the specific person. For a field update, if I am an admin person, I'll be like going for a flow rather
yeah,
than Apex class. And if I'm a dev person, I'll just forget something like a flow exists in Salesforce and directly go to the
yeah.
Apex class. So it is not rather than thinking it as a should not, it will be like depending on the person's
Okay,
comfortable thing to go. But
okay.
if you want to like quickly do things, yeah, time is also a matter, right? Time is also
Mhm.
a contributing factor. If it is like you have like in the next 1 hour you should complete things and finish it off, I would
Mhm.
suggest flow rather than Apex class. As we know, we have to put test class, and test
Yeah.
class will also include, we need to follow the best practices even in test class as well. So I'll suggest flow.
Okay, and one more question. In trigger,
Uh-huh.
we have to bulkify the code and
Mm-hmm.
all those things,
Yeah.
bulkification and
Mm.
use those best practice for bulkification.
Yeah.
Do we need to also consider bulkification in flow?
No, that will not be a part of it, because that part will come only when you call an Apex class, because the input that, as you see, the input that I passed on an Apex code was a list. It was not a single record. So only when you call an Apex class, that bulkification part will come into action. Currently in Flow, for doing small things, we will not be like, you can use, there are options to even instead of having a single input variable, you can have the other option to bulkify. But if it is not part of your main covering functionality, you don't have to.
Okay, yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sure. Anything else, team?
I think all are good, Parvi. Thanks for the wonderful session.
Thanks, team, and thanks for the opportunity.